Good morning, everybody, and welcome to East Devon District Council's Licensing and Enforcement Committee on the 13th of November 2024. I'm the Chair, Councillor Joe Wibley. Due to the late start, we are no longer anticipating a fire alarm test. However, if the fire alarm does sound again, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it's safe to return. If you can make sure all your phones are either muted or switched off. I'd also like to welcome members of the public and anybody watching online. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. So agenda item 1 is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of July 2024. Councillors, does anybody have any comment on the last sets of minutes held on the 17th of July 2024? Does anybody have any comments on them at all? And I should know this by now. Do we need to vote or do we just note them?
No, just note them.
We just need to note them. Oh, sorry, Tim.
Just going to propose, Chair.
Okay, we'll have a little vote then. Anybody would like to second them? Thank you very much, Yehudi. So we have a proposer and a seconder for accepting those minutes. All those in favour? Thank you very much. I will now sign them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I never did that. So agenda item 2 is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Ollie Davey. Do you just want to do a register for us, Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, apologies from Councillor Davey. So members of the committee present are Councillor Barlow, Councillor Bloxham, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Dumper, Councillor Gazzard, Councillor Heath, Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Levine, Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Westerman, and yourself, Chair, Councillor Wibley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. So do any members have any interest to declare? If so, please raise your hand and state which agenda item your interest relates to, the nature and type of your interest. Are there any other members present? Roy, do you have any declarations of interest at all?
No.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 4 is public speaking. I can't remember, is it Emily? Are you going to read? Or Philippa?
Sorry, thank you.
Emily USA
yes,
will now read a statement on behalf of Adrian Phillips of Millstream Taxis.
Thank you. So I don't have a statement to read, but I will pass on concerns that have been given to us this morning by Mr. Phillips of Millstream Taxis. His concerns relate to agenda item 8, which is the Hackney Carriage Fare Setting Procedure Report. I will outline the report in full later, but this relates to the committee being asked today to give consideration to looking at setting a procedure to calculate Hackney carriage fares going forwards. Mr. Phillips' concerns that he'd like to let the committee know today is his main concern is when this will be able to be brought into force. He's raised with me that at the committee meeting in May, he was given an assurance that fares would be reviewed annually each year going forward. And it was recorded on the minutes that the Guildford method of calculating a fare tariff would be brought into effect from 2025. The minutes don't clarify what month of 2025, but Mr. Phillips said that he was under the assumption that this would be every April, starting from April 2025. The 1st of April, so that the Hackney carriage fares could be brought into effect at the same time as any increase in the minimum wage. Mr. Phillips has concerns that any increase in the minimum wage will have a huge impact on his business, and that he's powerless in a way to compensate for that without having the fair rise from ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. Agenda item 5 is matters of urgency. Do we have any matters of urgency at all? No. And agenda item 6 is confidential or exempt items, and there are none. So agenda item 7 is a general licensing update on the Licensing Act, the Gambling Act, and the Taxes and General Licensing Act. So we'll now go to our licensing manager, Mrs. Norsworthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the general report is to advise members, provides an update on the activities of the licensing service under the various licensing regimes, the Licensing Act 2003, the Gambling Act 2005, taxi legislation and private hire legislation, and general licensing, including street trading and pavement licensing. So I'll start with the Licensing Act 2003. So the reporting period refers to the last quarter reporting period since your last meeting on the 17th of July. Since that meeting, and at the time the report was written, we received and processed 222 applications for licensed premises and temporary event notices. And a total of 14 premises of interest were visited during that reporting period. No Licensing Act 2003 applications have been referred to a licensing subcommittee since the 6th of March 2024. And at a previous meeting, members were advised that Home Office public consultation in relation to alcohol in licensed pavement areas was underway. This consultation ended on the 11th of July 2024. After making a check to the Home Office website to see if any results had come from that consultation, they're not actually published yet, but we will keep an eye on that and keep members informed. Licensing remains steady this time of year. We've been through a very busy period with regard to temporary event notices being submitted for Altree St Mary tar barrels. And myself and the police licensing officer visited the tar barrels evening on Tuesday, the 5th of November, to check all the street traders and everybody who had an authorisation in place via a temporary event notice. And moving on to pavement licensing. So the District Council now has control of pavement licences. This came into full effect on the 31st of March 2024. When due to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023 came into force. So permanent pavement licences are now issued by the district councils as opposed to the county council. We have been working very closely with the Devon Licensing Officers Group to produce a Devon-wide policy approach. We can update members at the next meeting and hopefully we'll have the workings of a draft policy to be presented at the next February meeting, all being well. Just moving on to the Gambling Act, you have a separate report submitted to you with regard to approving the statement of licensing policy to keep it in line with the cycle that it must be renewed every 3 years. So the next renewal date will be January 2025. So there is a separate report for you to have a look at that draft policy with a proposal for approval and for us to present that to full council on the 4th of December for adoption, ready for it to be in place in January 2025. Just to remind members, it was a summary review of that policy. There will be another more another review probably later on in the year once we have got the position from the Gambling Commission with regard to statutory standards. These have not been published as yet. Moving on to taxi and private hire licensing, as you'll be aware, you have a separate report regarding the Hackney Carriage Fare table of tariffs and the proposed implementation of the Guildford method. Other sort of information from taxis is we have come through the very significantly busy period of taxi renewals through September and October. We have a lot more new driver applications than usual. We've got currently 23 outstanding applications for new Hackney Carriage and private hire drivers. We have made one entry to the National Register of Revocations, Refusals and Suspensions during this reporting period, as it is mandatory for local authorities in England to input details of any driver licences that have been revoked, suspended or refused. So there was one entry for a suspension. And during the reporting period, so we had the Hackney Carriage driver's licence suspension, which was recorded, and we've had 2 Hackney Carriage vehicle licences that were suspended with immediate effect due to sort of the concerns to do with the vehicle. We have dealt with 6 significant complaints relating to Hackney Carriage and private hire drivers during the reporting period. We didn't have any referrals to the subcommittee. However, we did have a subcommittee for taxi matters last week on the 6th of November, where the subcommittee agreed to grant the licence of a private hire vehicle over 5 years. A driver's licence was suspended. We had a revocation of another driver's licence and the revocation of 2 Hackney Carriage vehicles. In November 2023, it became policy that all East Devon, Hackney and private hire drivers completed a mandatory safeguarding. So they were all notified back in November 2023 to have this completed by the 1st of November 2024. At the time of writing this report, 60% of existing drivers had completed that mandatory safeguarding. We have taken action to send out reminders for existing drivers that haven't done it, and we have had quite a few more come in, so it'll be more than 60% currently. We still remain in contact with the East Devon Taxi Association, so we attend those meetings with the East Devon Taxi Association at their request, so we have to be invited to attend those meetings where we attend to speak about any kind of licensing legislation matters only. Just to touch on briefly the consultation of VAT on private hire vehicles, there was an open consultation launched on the 18th of April 2024. This consultation closed on the 8th of August 2024, and the data from that consultation is still being analysed, and the government will produce a published response in due course. And just to add a note to that, just prior to the consultation closing on the 15th of July 2024, the UK Court of Appeal overturned the previous 2023 High Court ruling that private hire operators must collect VAT on the basis that they act as a contract principal. The 2024 appeal court judgment held that the private hire operator was not always the contracting party, a key assumption of the High Court decision. The legal opinion at present is therefore that private hire operators outside London should not be required to charge VAT. It is expected that any subsequent consultation response from the government will acknowledge the updated legal position pending any further appeal. Street trading, moving on to street trading, there is a separate report to members regarding we would like to ask for approval to review the existing street trading policy and have a look at the existing fees and charges. As I said, that's in a separate report to members. We have 25 street trading consents in operation. These include sole traders and traders as part of an event not held under a premises licence. We have currently 15 applications in progress. Staffing within the licensing team, there have been no updates to staffing within the licensing team during the last reporting period. And just to remind councillors that there is refresher training for council licensing council members on the Licensing Act and taxi and private hire legislation, and that has been arranged for the 21st of November. So we will be providing additional training on that date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anybody have any questions for Philippa at all? Steve, you were marginally first. Councillor Gazzard.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you for that. It's just to do with pavement licences, please. Have businesses been made aware that that East Devon are now dealing with payment licences? Because I had one business that came to me that applied through Devon County Council as they thought they had to, and it meant that he was told then it was East Devon, and he wasn't aware, or they weren't aware, that they had to go through East Devon. So businesses will be made aware that they've got to do it through East Devon now, please.
Yes, officers have been round to the businesses. So we received a list sort of towards the end of the summer this year from Devon County Council for their street cafe licences. So officers have been out and canvassed that we're now actually dealing with the pavement licences as opposed to Devon County Council. So any businesses that held a street cafe licence with county have been informed either face-to-face by an officer or we've written to them.
Thank you.
Maddie, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. On the safeguarding training for drivers, 40% haven't done it. What is the timescale you're going to put on? And are we going to be strict about this? Because I think we do need to be. Thank you.
So we have sent all the drivers that hadn't completed it a reminder, and to be perfectly fair, the majority of drivers have come back now. However, for drivers that don't conduct the safeguarding, which we probably look to have a date towards the end of this month, we will refer them to a licensing subcommittee, as it is a mandatory check for them to complete. So we will take further action for ones that haven't done it by the end of this month.
Thank you.
Councillor Barlow, Ian.
Just on that point, is that a legal requirement or is that our best practice?
It's a requirement from the Department of Transport statutory standards, which isn't a legal requirement. However, all local authorities within England are urged by the Department of Transport to take heed against that guidance. And in fact, back in 2023, our policy was updated to make the safeguarding a mandatory check for all new drivers and existing drivers to undergo.
Thank you.
And I would add to that as well, having seen some of the cases that have come to licensing subcommittees. In some cases, it's really important, you know, where mistakes have been made that probably wouldn't have been made had they had the safeguarding training. That leaves drivers in a really awkward position. So I think it's really important that we have that. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Yehudi, Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing. I think at the last count, I have 3 training sessions on Thursday, the 21st of November. And I think my brain is not going to be able to cope with it. Is it possible to ask officers to coordinate the training sessions so some committee members or some councillors don't have to go to school?
Thank you. I mean, I think with the previous one, because it got postponed, didn't it? I'd asked if it could be recorded because I had something else that I was needed to do. So we could certainly look at doing that again. I think if we would that be helpful, so you could then watch it when you were ready for it.
Yeah, as long as members attending were happy for that meeting to be recorded, then yes, we could record it. I don't see why not.
Cool. Thank you very much. Any more questions at all? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Very, very thorough report. I will now change my glasses. There we go. Agenda item 8 is Hackney Carriage fare setting procedure, and Emily Westlake will now present a summary of the report. Emily.
Thank you, Chair. So district councils are permitted under section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976 to set a fare tariff for Hackney carriages licensed within their district. East Devon District Council have used this power to set Hackney carriage fare tables for many years, and the most recent fare review was completed earlier this year. The current fare tariff can be found at Appendix A of the report, and it came into effect on the 18th of June 2024. The purpose of this report is now to ask the Licensing and Enforcement Committee to consider authorising a full review of the procedure that is used to calculate a suitable fare tariff in the district. Recent fare tariff reviews have been conducted by increasing the existing table of maximum fares by a suitable percentage, having taken into account relevant considerations including changes in inflation, fuel costs and other costs of running a taxi, in conjunction with information provided by the taxi trade themselves. The most recent fare rise that came into effect on the 18th of June gave effect to a 10% fare rise on the previous tariff. Following the introduction of the Department for Transport's taxi and private hire vehicle licensing best practice guidance, which recommends that authorities should consider adopting a simple formula for deciding on fare changes, the committee are asked to consider commencing the process to implement such a fare setting formula for East Devon. As stated in the guidance, it is intended that this will increase understanding and improve the transparency of the process for passengers, as when reviewing fare rates, authorities should pay particular regard to the needs of the travelling public, with reference to both what it is reasonable to expect people to pay, but also to the need to give taxi drivers the ability to earn a sufficient income and so incentivise them to provide a service where it is needed. The Licensing and Enforcement Committee have previously been asked to consider this as part of the 2024 review. However, at that time, the committee felt it was necessary to implement the fare increase urgently due to the rising costs of running a taxi in the district, and were concerned about the timescales involved in adopting a new fare setting procedure at that time. Therefore, on the 13th of March 2024, the committee resolved to use the existing method to calculate an appropriate fare rise and requested that a further report be brought to a future meeting of the committee regarding the potential implementation of a new fare setting procedure in 2025. This is the purpose of today's report. If the Licensing and Enforcement Committee are minded today to agree a review of the fare setting procedure in East Devon, the proposal would be to base this new procedure upon an existing fare setting procedure that was produced by Guildford Borough Council and that is considered best practice for setting Hackney carriage fare tariffs by many local authorities and has also been tested at judicial review. We'd like to extend our thanks to Guildford Borough Council for sharing their methodology and their fare calculator and for providing ongoing advice and assistance to us. There are three elements to the fare setting procedure developed by Guildford, that being a written methodology, setting out how fares are calculated, a fare calculator itself, which is an Excel spreadsheet that you plug all of the numbers into, and the table of fares. And it involves a formula that produces the basic charge per mile travelled with one passenger by an average driver that is required to provide an annual salary for the vehicle driver or proprietor once the average costs of the taxi have been covered. This will include running costs such as fuel, tyres, parts, servicing, depreciation of vehicles and insurance, as well as to cover licensing fees and charges. For a similar procedure to be adopted by East Devon District Council, it is acknowledged that the running costs involved with operating a taxi in this district are likely to vary substantially to those in Guildford, and therefore all of the cost factors and figures would need to be adjusted to be appropriate for this district. So that would be factors including an appropriate salary for East Devon, for the drivers, and also to look at the mileage travelled by vehicles in this district, both live and dead mileage, and also costs associated with running a taxi here. So with that in mind, if the committee were to agree to commencing a review of the fare setting procedure, they're also asked to consider today authorising the commencement of a detailed consultation with the taxi trade, where we would be looking to ask all Hackney carriage drivers and proprietors to participate in the setting of suitable average figures for the formula. It's well recognised that East Devon drivers and proprietors themselves are the best placed to know the costs involved with running a Hackney carriage vehicle and providing a taxi service in the district, and some of the relevant considerations would actually be very difficult to calculate without constructive input from the trade. If the committee were to authorise a consultation with the taxi trade today, our intention would be to publish a survey online asking for feedback and comments to be made by the taxi trade in relation to all of the cost factors involved with running a taxi in East Devon. So a draft of that survey is included at Appendix B of the report, together with a mileage recording exercise that we're looking to also ask the trade to participate in to try to ascertain suitable figures of live mileage, dead mileage carried out within the district. If you look at the survey at Appendix B, it sets out each of the cost factors that we have considered so far as relevant to running in a taxi in the district, although we would also be asking the trade if there are any more factors involved. And we're also looking to provide a draft estimated figure for each of those cost factors, together with an explanation of how that figure's been calculated, to give the trade a very rough estimate of a starting figure upon which to comment on. So those draft figures we've been working on over the past month or so and are almost ready to go. So they've been compiled using data held by ourselves and data from national statistics and other appropriate information sources. Like I say, we'd be looking to include figures within the survey as an estimate, but that really would be a very rough starting point because we need a lot of participation from our trade to help us set accurate figures. So to encourage participation in the survey, we'd be looking to publicise it in as many ways as possible. So as I said, we'd be hoping to publish the survey online, and a link to that would be emailed out to all drivers and proprietors. It would also be publicised on the council website, and myself and other officers would be looking to attend any trade association meetings that we're invited to discuss this with the drivers. We'd also be looking, if it was agreed, to hold a taxi liaison meeting here at the council offices, and all proprietors and drivers would be invited to attend, where we could explain further the purpose of the survey and the information that we're hoping to gather. It's proposed to run the survey for a period of between 8 and 12 weeks, and the committee are asked today to consider what time period they think is most appropriate. Once the survey results have been collated and the information provided, those results will be analysed, and then we would be looking to finalise an appropriate figure for each cost factor within the formula. At that time, a full methodology would be drafted, including all of those cost factors and figures, and we'd be looking to bring that back to a further meeting of the Licensing and Enforcement Committee for consideration. At that meeting, the committee would be asked to consider whether they were in agreement with that methodology and the figures included, and whether they considered further consultation necessary. I just remind the committee that if the procedure were to be adopted and a new fare table was agreed, that the statutory consultation set down in section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976 would need to be carried out before any fare change could be implemented. That section of the Act provides that once you have the draft fare table, that it's published in local newspaper and at council offices for a period of at least 14 days, within which objections can be made before it comes into effect. Thank you. Happy for any questions.
Thank you very much. Can I just say, first of all, I didn't realise quite how extensive a piece of work this was. I think that's really important for us to consider. Okay, we will go to questions outside of the committee. First of all, Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Could the Exmouth urban area be kept separate from the other areas in East Devon, like Honiton? Because I think you're going to get different results, because Exmouth being urban and Honiton rural, there's quite a lot of difference in the way the taxis work. Could they be separated, please?
We do appreciate that within our district, the way that different companies, different proprietors, different drivers operate is quite variable. We are going to need to look to find an average. So that's one of the really important reasons for the consultation, and we're really hoping to encourage as much participation as possible, so that we can look at all of those different working practices, because some of our taxis in the district, as you say, maybe more over in Exmouth, work very much from the rank, whereas other taxis in the district will take a lot more telephone bookings and regular runs. So no, it's not possible to separate Exmouth off, but we will absolutely be looking to consider the whole range of feedback from all the different operations in the trade and come to a suitable average figure for each cost factor calculation.
I would say as well that I think if you're actually calculating that average using evidence, it's probably better than what we do as a committee, where we don't get to see that and we don't appreciate it. Thanks for your question, Councillor Collins. Do we have any questions within the committee? Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. I want to welcome the proposals. I think it's a good thing to try, but I've got two concerns. The first one is, we were told at previous meetings that when you have a meeting with the taxi associations, only about 10% of them turn up. So, and the other thing is, would drivers consider not fill in the forms about their journeys because they feel that this is infringement of privacy, they don't want to disclose anything? So if we are going to go down this route, should we set a minimum of percentage of participation so that we don't base our decisions only on those few people who bother to give us information? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, it is a concern about how much level of participation we will get. That's why we're sort of hoping to look at lots of different methods of encouraging that. That's one of the reasons why we really want to hold a taxi liaison meeting here, as well as going to the trade association meeting, because not all members of the trade come to the association meeting, and we're hoping that by having a meeting here on sort of in the middle of the district on neutral ground, that more people might come along. Yes, it is really important that the trade participate in this, and we can set the factors without the trade participation, but to get the most accurate measures for our district, we really do need that. So that's why I'm looking within the survey to have spent quite a lot of time working on calculating suitable figures for each of the cost factors. For example, a suitable estimate of how much insurance costs each year, a suitable estimate of how much mileage our taxis are doing each year. I've had to look at all the MOTs for all of our taxis within the district and deducted year from year to give an average figure and calculated averages. Been doing all sorts of things like that to, from data, get as good a figure as I can, but we really need that participation from the trade. I don't know at the moment what levels of response we will get, and that would of course be fed back to the committee when we bring the results back together with the methodology, and then that would be something to give consideration to at that time. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Barlow. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So a few questions. So do we have the funding resources to be able to do this consultation, or have we got to go and get some more? When the consultation is done, bearing in mind the question we had at the start of this meeting, how long will it take to implement it? I know we've got a meeting coming up on the 5th of February. Are we likely to have it completed by then? Seems a little optimistic, possibly. And then another one, obviously, in April. And then you've got, obviously, you're saying that there's a 2-week consultation period then, should we adopt it? And are you confident that the Guildford, and I know we went through this in the last meeting, but are you confident the Guildford system, after what Councillor Collins asked, is suitable for our area? Or is the Guildford one based on a more urban sort of thing? Although I know Guildford is obviously surrounded by countryside as well.
Thank you. With regard to funding and resources, maybe best for my manager to speak on that. However, yes, we will be looking. It will take a rather large amount of resources from our team to get this done. It is an awful lot of work. It's been quite a lot of work already calculating the draft figures, and then obviously running the survey, and then it will be a large piece of work to collate the results and produce the methodology. However, we are looking to resource that from our existing team by shuffling people around. With regard to how long it will take, I can't give a definite answer or promise anything because of the variables involved. However, as you say, regardless of whether we do an 8-week or a 12-week consultation, I think it would be unlikely to be able to bring this back to the meeting in February, because after that consultation has been completed, it is going to be a lot of work to analyse the results and adjust those figures accurately. I think it's possible for the following meeting on the 2nd of April. I'd be looking to bring a report back then to the committee, setting out the methodology and the figures, and with a table of fares that reflected what had come out of the calculator, basically. Where we go from there, I can't really say, because it would depend how the committee felt about the methodology and the figures produced, depending on how much the new table of fares varied, say, from the existing table of fares. You may find it necessary to do a further consultation with the trade before approving the table of fares, or you may be happy to approve the table of fares on that date and authorise the statutory 14-day minimum consultation period. Were that to be the case, it takes a week or so to get the newspaper adverts arranged and everything, so you'd be looking sort of around the start of May, I would imagine. But again, that all depends on how you felt at the hearing on the 2nd of April regarding the methodology.
Could I just ask, am I right in assuming that if, for example, we were to shuffle meetings around, maybe move the April one back and the March one, the February one to March perhaps, is that still too early for you? Just in terms of potentially moving things on, and I don't want to put any pressure on the team because I completely understand.
Let me just do some calculations in my mind.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, just for the members to acknowledge how hard Emily has worked on this, providing these appendices and a very comprehensive report for you. It's taken a lot of time. It has meant that I've had to relinquish Emily from her day-to-day job during a very busy taxi and private hire renewal period. We do have good support within the team. I would not be looking to outsource any of this work to anybody external or from an agency, because the expertise for undertaking this project lies very heavily within the team, and Emily is more than capable of taking it. However, I am acutely aware that she doesn't get overcome with too much pressure of this type of work, so she'll have plenty of support, and I will make sure she's got the resources needed to be able to do that.
Okay, Ian, do you want to come back? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, it's going to depend. We've got decisions to make whether it's 8 or 12 weeks consultation that we recommend. So obviously that makes a big difference on the timings coming back. And obviously it's, the taxi saying how much they're going to engage with this. It's in their interest to engage with this. So there's an awful lot of if, buts and maybes in this. So perhaps we are asking a little bit too much to know exactly when this will come back.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. Tim, Councillor Dumper.
Yes, I thank you, Joe. Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, in the light of the public comment that Emily reflected just now from the taxi trade, whether there were any way, because I can understand and I know the amount of work you put into this, I wondered whether there was a way of perhaps doing a temporary raise of the under the old system when the minimum wage comes in, and then doing the Guildford method when the surveys and consultations are complete.
That's a possibility. Yes, that's a possibility. I could bring a report back in February, looking at a raise under the old method. A couple of considerations I would say in relation to that are that as part of the statutory consultation that has to be done under the Act, we do have to publish notice in a newspaper, and that is quite expensive. So if we were looking to do two quite close to each other, that would be a significant additional expense. And there would be slightly more work involved in also bringing a further report to the February meeting. But it is possible. With regard to the dates of the meeting that were brought up earlier, whether there's any scope for moving those meetings slightly, I would say possibly only a couple of weeks. I don't think it would be possible to do the work any more than maybe 2 weeks earlier. Thank you.
Okay, and that's not necessarily pressure that we'd want to be putting you under. Richard.
Devon, although I understand that the average has to be across East Devon, is there any kind of way of doing something spatial involving distance from an urban centre that can adjust a fare? Because in rural areas, I know users of taxis want that service to be available, and as I vaguely understand it, you get a lot of dead time if you're going out and doing things in a rural area. Is there any way to adjust that so that we can build a mechanism in that helps that, so that it maintains and improves the service that's available to rural people?
Yes, so we do actually have in our existing fare tariff a maximum booking fee of £13.20, and that's to account for those circumstances, really. So the booking fee can only be charged if the vehicle proprietor or driver has advised the customer of that in advance, but that booking fee does exist to give the option if the driver has a long journey to get to pick up the fare. So that is something we could keep in or could not keep in for the formula going forward.
And that is one of the questions, isn't it, in the survey about dead miles?
Yeah, that's one of the very important questions that really is difficult to calculate without feedback from the trade. And I have done Appendix C. a sort of crib sheet that could be used by drivers to record the mileage they travel over a couple of days as a sample, to hopefully give us some data on this. I know Mr. Phillips mentioned to me earlier that he has been keeping a record of dead mileage travelled, and that's really useful because it is a really important factor, and it does make a big difference to the fare calculator, the dead mileage. The percentage of that does have a large effect on the outcome of the fares. So yes, I think there was a question earlier that I didn't answer about the Guildford formula and whether it is applicable to our district as well as Guildford. I would say yes, it is, because it's very much, we're not looking to use their formula word by word at all. It's very much a framework within which you can hang your own costs and mileage and all the things applicable to your own district. We're only looking to use their very broad framework. We're very much looking to put our own data into that. Thanks.
Just to come back on that, just so I've got it in my mind, if I live in Luppet, so if I book a taxi from Luppet to Honiton, there would be an opportunity to insert that booking fee. However, if I'm in Honiton and I just walk up to a taxi and say, can you take me to Luppet? I'm not a big taxi user, but I know there's a look on the taxi driver's face of, I don't want to go to Luppet. And I don't know if there's anything we can do to insert something in there so it's not a booking fee that would have to be pre-arranged, or could you arrange it on the roadside? There's something in there, and you know when you're leaving your house, but you don't necessarily when you're coming back or you're getting off a train and walking to a taxi rank. Don't know if it picks that up. Thank you.
Yeah, and that can be done. The important thing with the booking fee, maybe that's not quite the right word for it, but the important thing is that the customer has to be advised in advance. So if you were to, you have to agree that in advance. But that's certainly something we can look at when we come to do the methodology. As the methodology stands at the moment, it sort of tries to take into account an average. However, that, as you say, that's not necessarily always going to work for our district, so it may be best to keep that booking fee or something similar in there.
Okay, thank you. Steve, Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to think what I was going to say now. Obviously, if we do adopt the Guildford method, it's going to be a major change in the way that taxis operate. So therefore, we do need full cooperation with taxi organisations and drivers to partake in the survey. And forgive me if you've already thought with this. I mean, you do hold all the taxis, drivers' names and addresses. Could we send, or could you send them an email with the survey on, and hopefully we could get more drivers actually responding, then rather than just not being disconcerting or anything, just the manager of the company. I mean, I'm thinking of my area in Exmouth. Is that something that you thought of, please?
Yes, that's absolutely something we would want to do. We regularly send correspondence out to all of our drivers and proprietors by email, and we do have the facility to do that. For example, recently we've sent some guidance on taking guide dogs in vehicles. We've sent that out to all of our drivers and proprietors. So yeah, what I'd be looking to do is send an email out to every single proprietor and vehicle proprietor and driver in the district, not just companies, every individual themselves, explaining what we're doing, giving the link to the survey, and I imagine I'll probably look to send a further reminder as well, sort of halfway through, to encourage that. And I would stress, in all correspondence how important it is that that the trade do give their feedback, because as was mentioned earlier, it is really in their interests to participate with this, to make sure we can get a really accurate reflection of what the costs are, because there'll be costs that we haven't thought of, that the drivers know much better about than we do. Thanks.
So we have a couple more questions. Just before we hear those, can we start to guide our thinking maybe towards some of the sort of the conclusions and recommendations of the report, where we consider as a committee if this is something we want to go ahead with? And the other question is, assuming that's the case, that we think about the timescale for the consultation. The next person, Yehudi again. Yehudi.
Thank you, Chair. Just to back on what Councillor Gadget just said, participation of drivers is key. And as an has-been statistician, I know that without participation, the results are meaningless. But what I think is important is to assure drivers that all the information they give us about their journeys will be anonymized, that there will be no repercussions, or we won't be feeding their employers for any misdemeanors or whatever, that it is impersonal. Because I don't think that if we don't reassure them on that, I don't think they will take part.
I think it does say that in the report, doesn't it? It says that it will be used, it may be published for council purposes, but not attributed to anybody or used for any other purpose. Because that's GDPR, isn't it, really?
Yes, so the intention was to ask them to give their name when completing the survey, but so that we can assure that the responses are genuine, and that we're not, for example, having one person submit the survey 10 separate times. However, we wouldn't be looking to publish those names anywhere or pass any of the data on to anybody else other than ourselves, for the purpose of collating the responses. And yeah, I'm happy to make that more than clear in the survey itself. Hopefully the data we're asking for isn't too intrusive. It will mainly relate to mileage and cost factors, such as how much they spend at garages each year, how much tyres are costing them each year, what their insurance cost. But I do understand that some people might have concerns about providing that information, and yeah, I'll make that as clear as possible in the survey, that the data won't be, the individual names and information won't be passed on further. Thank you.
Okay, and final question at this point is Ian, Councillor Barlow.
Just going back to something I said earlier about the difference between picking up a taxi in Honiton and going to Luppet, or calling a taxi to Luppet to go perhaps a short journey. If you're in Honiton going to Luppet and you know the mileage, I presume you're paid for an amount to be able to come back, because you're getting more money because it's a nice long run, and you would have the money built into it to come back. It should be built into the fare. Whereas if you're called out to Luppet and you only want to go half a mile down the road, that I think is when you need your booking form to make the difference up. So I think there is a difference in that, and it should be built into the mileage, that you have a certain amount to be able to come back with dead miles, I would have thought. And obviously, going forward to your other point, I would suggest that we do accept the recommendations, and I would suggest that we make it an 8-week, basically, again, on what we've listened to of the importance to taxi drivers to be able to be confident they can afford it in April, to get as close to that as we can, should we accept this. So I would suggest that we go for the 8-week thing, and make sure that we stress to the taxi drivers, it's up to them. The quicker they get it back, the quicker we can get on with this. So if there is a delay, it's not our fault. It will be, some of the blame will be shared, shall we put it like that?
Okay, thank you. I mean, my question when considering the 8-week, because actually that's before we go to the recommendations, well, actually, no, we do need to do their own, but my thought about that is, if they're not going to engage in 8 weeks, why are they going to engage in 12? So if we can move to, so the recommendations 2, the first one. Oh, so yeah, so you've proposed the recommendations as set out in here. I'll just read them out just for clarity. So the recommendation is that the Licensing and Enforcement Committee consider authorising a review of the procedure used to calculate Hackney carriage fares in the district, based upon the methodology and fare setting calculator developed by Guildford Borough Council and adjusted for local considerations. And that the Licensing and Enforcement Committee consider authorising the launch of a consultation with the East Devon taxi trade to ask all hackney carriage drivers and proprietors to participate in the setting of a suitable average figures for the cost of running a taxi in the district. So we do have a proposer for that. Is anybody happy to second it? Councillor Levine, sorry.
Do you want to get 8 or 12 weeks?
Yeah, we'll decide that afterwards. We'll have a little vote on that. So we have a proposer and a seconder for that. Sorry, Maddie, Yehudi beat you on that one. You'll have to up your game. So we have a proposer and a seconder for those recommendations. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. I guess the next question is, because we voted to launch a consultation, I mean, effectively Ian's proposed 8 weeks, and I'm happy to second that from the chair. Does anybody strongly disagree with that? Okay.
Having listened to what she was saying, the amount of work and the calculations and chasing everyone up for the information, I think maybe we could stick another couple of weeks on it.
Just in terms of how that would work, I mean, the consultation for you is, I guess you put the consultation out and then you sit back and wait for stuff to come in. You're going to do your initial sort of publicity. Are you going to be chasing people up, or?
Yes, so I think there would be some work to be done during the consultation period to chase it up. So yeah, a lot of it would all go out, say we publish the survey the next day or the same day, we'd email it out to all of the drivers. However, I do need to have time within that consultation period to have a liaison meeting here. I would imagine that the trade would want to have one of their trade association meetings during that consultation period. And also, I probably would send a reminder, because I usually do, to try and encourage, because it does, one email, it can go into junk and it can get looked at, think, oh, I'll come back to do that later, and you never do. So yeah, I probably would want to send a reminder. I guess there's no reason, I just put it out there as well, why it couldn't be 10 weeks. It's not necessarily 8 or 12, it's something within that. Thank you.
Okay. We'll just hear from Ian.
Well, I was going to suggest 6 weeks, so I better keep quiet on that. I just think that, do you know what? You can let these things slip as much as you want. You can give people as much time as you want. It's quick enough. If you want to push, if the taxi drivers think it's important, then I'm sure they will act as it important. If it isn't, then it will slip. So, as I said, I think we should give them what they want. They've sent a letter in saying that this is important. They want time. Let's make it 8 weeks and then see what they can do. And if they can't do it, it will slip.
So we do have a proposer and a seconder for 8 weeks, although having heard what the officers have said, I'm not so sure. So we just can we just have a vote on 8 weeks and see where we sit?
Is Councillor Chapman making a proposal? Is there someone to second that proposal first of all, please?
I'm happy to second. What say? You're happy to second 10 weeks?
Yes.
Wasn't that one made first, though? So how
Sorry?
does this work? Wasn't the one that...
Oh, vote on the
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder for 8 weeks. All those in favour of 8 weeks? I haven't voted on it though. I've changed my mind, which I'm able to do. So it is 8 weeks then. Is it not? Can you just raise your hands again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. No, it's not. I can't count. So we have a proposer. So that is we objected to that. Tim?
Sorry, Chair. Can I ask if we still get the issue of the April implementation versus the May implementation, if there is any way of inserting a consideration on the proposal I made of having an interim declaration for April?
I'm just going to ask. Yeah, we'll come to that after this. I think. So a proposal and a seconder for 10 weeks. Yeah, we did have a vote, so that was a vote against 8 weeks.
Nobody voted. You only did.
Oh, okay. All those who vote against 8 weeks. Right, so let's start this again. Could you raise your hands if you are in favour of 8 weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, could you raise your hands if you are against 8 weeks? Okay, so we have voted against that now. So now we will vote on 10 weeks as proposed by Maddie and seconded by John. All those in favour of 10 weeks? All those against? And abstentions? Okay, is there an issue? Is there an issue at all? No, okay, thank you. Okay, so now to come to Tim's point. Can I ask sorry, just hold on a second. Just can I just ask the licensing managers in terms of implementing a kind of secondary option where if things are not going to be ready, we have a we have a sort of what we've done this year and previous years ready to go. That's going to put back. If you're doing that at the same time as sorting out the Guildford method, you're not going to have the Guildford method done, are you? I would imagine that would be my.
In all honesty,
concern.
that's too much pressure on the licensing team to be able to work out, do a full report, because as you know, even the report for the looking at the percentage increase is comprehensive and onerous enough. I do not have the facilities or resources to be able to have 2 reports running like that concurrently.
Okay. Councillor Barlow, Ian.
Well, can we make something where we just go up by a percentage, i.e. the cost of living or something like that you could cover into that?
It's such a huge amount of work, and it's got to be done legally within certain frameworks and stuff, which is why every year we end up, we do get to the point where we get to April with the normal method and it's not in place because there's so many hoops to go through.
So is this a sensible time to do this then? Yeah. You've got to make a decision.
Well, we voted to now. So
well, no, we've voted to do that. That's fine, but it doesn't say when we implement that. All I'm saying to you is, if we've got to put the fares up in April, if that is the fair thing to do, realistically, that's not possible, you're saying. Even if we go to the consultation, that's not possible. So we're realistically saying we are not going to be putting the fares up in April. Is that correct? Either way, unless we do the original way we do now.
Emily?
I think if you were looking at doing an interim fare rise with the existing methodology, you really need to consider the time difference between bringing in the 2 fare rises. If you're only looking at a month or 2, you've got to bring into consideration the cost of the public consultation and advertisement with that, and also the work involved. With regard to on a separate issue, the discussion about possibly bringing forward the 2nd of April meeting slightly. It may be possible if it's agreed on a 10-week consultation to bring that slightly earlier by, say, a couple of weeks, if that was a possibility. Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Okay, well, on that point, we'll very much we'll play it by ear. I think that's all we can do, because obviously, if your work means we can't do that, that's fair enough. I think it's really important to remember the last committee meeting where we where we agreed to sort of look into this more closely and have the discussion we've had today, where the idea of it was that, yes, it's a large piece of work, but the idea is that we get that piece of work done now, and then we don't have to do this every year. So yes, it might be really difficult this year. It might put people under pressure, and I appreciate taxi firms. It may put some of them in difficult positions temporarily, and it may put the officers under severe pressure. But the idea is we do this now and we get it done, and then there's a simple process which can be timed with meetings every year in future, whereby we don't have to do all of this, and we don't have to have we're not guessing in the way that we have done in the past about how much petrol's gone up, for example, and whether it might go down next week, because we'll have actual figures in place every year. So we have voted on those recommendations, and we have agreed on a 10-week consultation. So I think we should probably move on. Can we just take a 5-minute break? Is that okay? Thank you. Sorry, we do need to move on. Are we back on, Sarah? Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. So now we move to agenda item 9, the draft statement of the gambling policy. Mr. Staples will now present a summary of the report. Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report concerns a recommendation for approval of a statement of licence policy for Gambling Act matters covering the period 2025 to 2028. We put the draft policy to the committee on the 17th of July, and following on from that, we've gone out and done a consultation exercise. We've gone out to 31 statutory consultees and interested parties. And this report summarises the response or lack thereof that we've received. The lack of responses to the consultation was by no means a surprise to either yourselves and the committee, I'm sure, and certainly not to officers. In effect, what we have here is an interim policy. This is an amendment and a new policy that's proposed to come into effect on the 31st of January so that we can fit in with the 3-year cycle of reviewing the policy as required by the Gambling Act. In effect, what we are doing here is we are putting this interim policy forward to comply with that, pending the Gambling Commission giving updated guidance to licensing authorities that we would need to then do a more substantive review of the policy. And the reason why we're waiting for that information from the Gambling Act is that the consultations that happened over the course of the summer in 2023, the public consultations that the government did, out of that there could be some quite substantive changes to the regulation of gambling in the country. And out of those changes, a number of those changes are likely to significantly impact on the gambling regulation that we as a local authority are responsible for. So we have one substantive response that was from the Public Health Department at Devon County, which we're grateful for. They've put forward some helpful suggestions on the terminology used and including some signposting to support services for gambling recovery and gambling support services. And effectively, we've looked through the policy and we feel that in its current form, it works. Basically, it covers that, but we will be looking to include a dedicated section on support services for gambling issues in a further amended report when we get that information through from the Gambling Commission. So essentially here, the recommendation here is for you to approve the policy and put it forward to full council for adoption in January, so we fit in with that legal framework. And it's a watch this space, pending how much, how substantive the changes are from the Gambling Commission to the guidance to local authorities. I've kept it short and sweet. You've got a lot of information today, but I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.
So effectively, we're keeping it as it is until we need to change it, because the rules and laws around that are changing. Okay, Councillor Barlow, Ian.
Happy to oppose when you're ready, Chair.
Is anybody happy to second, or does anybody have any? Okay, let's ask this another way. Learning from experience, does anybody have any further comments? Is anybody happy to second? Oh, go on then, Maddie. Councillor Chapman. We have a proposer and a seconder for acceptance. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, Lee. And now we move to a review of the street trading policy. And again, I know you'll make this clear in your report, but this is very much about us giving consent for the policy to be reviewed. We're not looking at anything that's in the policy today, if that makes sense. So I will now hand over to Mrs. Norsworthy, the licensing manager, who will present a summary of the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to outline the main points of the purpose of this report, we would like to seek approval from members to review our existing policy for street trading. This is with a view to conducting a public consultation regarding any proposed amendments after a draft version of the policy is presented to members, and I'm hoping to get that to you at your next meeting in February. Also contained in the report is a request for members to approve for us to review the existing fees and charges within the street trading policy regime, and to consider the introduction of a fee for holding a consent in addition to the application fee. One of the main reasons for asking for a review of the current fees and charges is that currently the administration and enforcement needed for street trading is significantly outweighed by actually what we take in as an income. So we would just like to ask permission if we could have a look at those fees and charges and come up with some proposed fees and charges at the next meeting, as well as a draft policy. So we use the policy every day with regard to the administration and enforcement of street trading. It's a busy regime that we have within the licensing team. And officers dealing with the policy have often, and also members of the public, I might say, and applicants for street trading consent have questioned our policy, because in some areas we believe the policy to be slightly ambiguous. Some parts of the policy just need further clarification so we can be absolutely sure as to what we're requiring with regard to the issuing of consents. It's just important to remind members that the consent is in a sense a gift from the council. It can be removed without any legal appeal process being in place. It's not a licence. As such, it is a consent, i.e. gift of the council. Councils, local authorities don't have to have street trading policy. It's not a statutory policy, and they also don't have to adopt the provisions of the Schedule 4 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982. Incidentally, East Devon District Council has adopted the Schedule 4 of that legislation back in December 1982. I just wanted to make that clear. Just a couple of examples of where we would like to have a sort of more clarification, really, to help officers in their day-to-day working with regarding administering and officers going out to deal with enforcement as well. At the current moment, ice cream vans and mobile food vans offering food for sale are not covered by street trading consent. However, the policy tends to slightly contradicts itself with regard to the case law it presents at section 3F, exemptions, refers to roundsmen for purposes of exemption for street trading. A roundsman being, in a sense, a delivery, inserts the word like a milkman, or just food delivery or veg delivery. And there is legal case law, precedent case law for Kempin trading as British Bulldog ice cream versus Brighton and Hove Council in 2001, which determined that a roundsman can only be considered so if they delivered pre-ordered goods within a locality. On this basis, ice cream vans and mobile food vans driving around the area offering goods for sale are not considered to be a roundsman in that sense, as they are not delivering pre-ordered goods. So in one sense, we're saying in the policy, yes, we should include ice cream vans and mobile food vans. But then later on in the policy, it refers to ice cream vans and mobile traders, and it's not very clear as to whether or not they do fall into the policy. You could argue it either way by the way it's written in our policy, and we would like to get that cleared up to actually include ice cream vans and mobile food vans in line with that case law, as I previously stated. We've had issues with privately owned land and enclosed land as to what would constitute an enclosed area. That's for our sense has been a bone of contention between applicants and officers, and also as well any area any area whether you have a pop-up premises, for example, like a lone trader who's selling alcohol. Currently, they would be exempt from having street trading consent because they hold a premises licence, which in our policy exempts street traders from obtaining that consent, but it's not clear that the street trading would only be exempt if it was part of a bigger event, not just somebody trading in a kind of an area where the public can gain access without payment, or in a public area, for that matter. So there's just a few examples, and I'm sure you've read through that we would like to have a bit more robust wording and less ambiguity. So members to sort of have a think about and consider whether or not you agree to us having, you know, a good review of that policy, and you agree to us reviewing the current fees and charges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions at all? Councillor Chapman.
Yes, just for clarity. So what you're saying is that if premises have a license, licensed by this authority, and they're partaking, say it was something like in the Strand, and they put a stall out to support a charity event or any event that's going on, that you want to charge them extra so that stall is not covered under the premises that they already paid the licence for? Is that what you're saying? I'm getting a bit...
No, what I'm saying is if you have an event, say for example in the Strand, and the event is covered, the entirety of the event is covered by a premises licence, then to have street trading within the scope of that premises, they would not be required to apply for street trading consent as an extra thing to pay for, because we know they're part of the event. What I was trying to sort of, sorry, I didn't explain it very well. What I was trying to say was if you had sort of lone mobile traders setting up who had, who were covering themselves under a premises licence but weren't part of a main event, they should be in scope for having street trading for that authorisation for selling alcohol. So they're actually street trading, but they could have a licence in place for the sale of alcohol. But I'm talking about a lone trader as opposed to more traders being part of a main event under a premises licence.
Do we have any more questions at all, Councillor Dumper?
Yes, just to ask, I mean, I'd like to support and propose this, just to say, I personally am a bit unhappy about the idea of consents having to have fees attached, because I fear it would discourage people from actually applying properly, and I don't think we want to do that. But having said that, I mean, such a review should be wide-ranging and should cover everything, so we await your next report.
Ian, Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, I sort of agree, but I do. We certainly don't want to make it more complicated. The simpler these things are, the better. And I understand that there might be slight problems in it, which would be great if they just sorted out. But as long as we don't make it more complicated, I think, as the point is, applying for these things, we should be encouraging. It's a simple thing, stamped there, and yeah. We sometimes get hold of these things and then make it so complicated that it takes forever and we have to put our rates up. But I know we're not discussing that now. We just want a consultation. So, yeah, I have no problem with that.
Thank you. Just in response to that, we won't be looking to make the policy even more complicated. We will be looking to simplify it so it's clearer for applicants, and that officers are on a good footing to deal with enforcement issues that we have to deal with unlike, you know, traders that don't hold a consent. With regard to fees and charges for holding street trading consents, a lot of street traders do deal in the same kind of line of business as established food businesses, and they're not paying business rates. It's not for us to try and discourage people or any kind of, you know, street trading as part of a community spirit that might be covered by markets or that sort of thing. They wouldn't come into scope for street trading, nor would kind of any big events under a premises licence come into scope for street trading either. But yeah, so we just have to be, the review will be fair across the board. We'll look at other similar local authority districts, but we're not just putting up rates for the sake of it. it is a matter of fact that what we charge now does not compensate for what the work that is put in via administration and enforcement in this licensed area.
Okay, any more comments? Tim, did you propose accepting these recommendations? Is anybody else willing to second them? Councillor, oh, was that your hand up? I think that one went up first this time. So Councillor Bloxham has seconded. So a proposer and a seconder for accepting this request to review the street trading policy and the fees and charges. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody for attending the meeting, and that brings it to a close. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.